Dude, he's up on the caviar, bro.
These are fantastic.
Who says that?
Jay-Z.
Oh my God.
See, this conversation that's going on right now, this is what I equate to the Stretch. No, seriously, the Stretch and Bobbito show, right? That's what
Yeah.
I have fond memories, and I never lived in New York, right? But I went to New York a lot. It's a shame. I mean, obviously, we have Stretch Armstrong right here.
That's a shame.
No, sorry. That came out wrong. We have Stretch Armstrong here, but it's a shame that Bobbito wasn't able to make it because me and Bob actually go way back when he was working at Def Jam.
Of course.
And he knew me as a 15-year-old kid doing a college show here in Toronto, and him being promotions director or whatever the title was, at the mix show coordinator or whatever he was. He was the guy that I went to, or he went to me to make sure that his product was getting played at Def Jam. So we're talking 87 or 88 or whatever it was. And so he knew that I was in New York a lot. But I was never there on a Thursday night that I can recall where I'd be like, oh, I should be listening to 89 Tech 9 right now. And so I don't get to have those memories of saying, yeah, I was there and I was taping.
Sure.
Because I did tape Molly Mall, and I taped Red Alert, and I taped Chuck Chill Out, and we would go back and forth on the box and all that. But one of my fondest memories, and when I saw Bob earlier in the summer, he was in town, and he mentioned to me that the documentary was coming out. I got all giddy because one of my fondest memories was there was one time where I came to the show because I just happened to be in New York, and it was probably a little later, so this was probably... you know when it was? Because I came to your house the next day. It was when...
I came to my house.
I did. Your condo, your apartment. You had, like, records stacked so high. I think you had a ladder that you had to climb up because the...
Typical Stretch Armstrong.
The shelves are, like, taller than you.
That's probably on 91st Street or 23rd.
I can't remember what I did last week.
Was it one wall or
no,
or
it was
three
one
walls?
wall. It was one giant wall. I got a picture. I think I tweeted it to you or I sent it to you or something.
Oh, crazy.
It's a great photo. But it was when the remix for The World Is Yours came out. So it was 94 then.
Okay,
94, 95, right? Around there. And so that was one of my fondest memories. You know what I mean? Like, and so when I was told about the movie, I was like, oh, at least I was there. For one day, I came there at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I sat in a corner like a little, like a kid on Christmas Eve watching, what ends up being a super loved and revered, part of the hip-hop culture. So did you, and this is such a stupid question because of course you didn't, but did you realize that this is the impact that the show was going to have years later?
I mean, I think, I could answer that yes and no. I mean, in some ways we knew that as the show was growing and progressing over the years that what it meant to people.
Right.
But we didn't really, I don't think we really knew the extent of that until we actually started making this movie. When we actually started interviewing listeners and when you're doing a radio show, people are sort of coming into, they're listening to you. You're in this box here, and the whole world is out there, and everyone is connected to you via the signal, right?
Right.
So in making this film, we thought, let's retrace those signals and go out and try to find who was listening and see who's got compelling stories about their ritual of staying up late and taping, or how they got tapes if they weren't in New York, or if they had to go to sleep, and how they would actually make these recordings happen, or the first time they heard the show from their boy or some kid who wouldn't dub it because he wanted it to be his own secret. And in doing that, we just hear these stories about people from, whether it's a kid who lived in the Black Forest in Germany who had to travel 3 hours just to go find someone who had a tape and dub it and then go back home. So you're talking about, 3 hours driving through the forest the actual, real time dub of a tape and then driving back. I just met this dude in London 3 weeks ago who told me that. And, talking to kids who lived in Long Island or New Jersey and, telling me, on Thursday nights, our whole dorm was shut down. Every room, the door was open, tuned to 89.9.
Which interesting, because we had stations like that here. Hip hop has been, in Toronto since, I think there was a station that was playing it before, like 83 or 84. And it was the same thing. It was a 1 day a week thing. The only place you could hear it. It was on for 3 hours. And I remember as a kid, I told my parents, Saturdays 1 to 4, don't call me, don't look for me. And I remember I had to be outside on the deck with my box and a coat hanger because the signal was only like 50 watts.
Exactly.
And you had to do what you had. You literally had to do what you had to do.
Exactly.
To find what you wanted to find.
And that's like a recurring theme in this documentary. I don't want to give too much away, but one thing that Bob and I have continuously said, as we tour this film and do Q&As and whatnot, is that accessibility in hip hop is not necessarily a good thing. And for those of us who had to go out of our way, stay up late, put the clothes hanger in the box, or drive 5 miles to get a better signal so that we could, in our car, put a tape in and press record on a boombox. That whole ritual sort of, it gave the experience, it informed the experience in a way that's different than the convenience that we have now, and it made that ritual sort of important, and it made you love the music more and made you appreciate it more because you were devoted to it.
Now obviously years later, and the fact that the internet exists, whereas it didn't necessarily exist back then, a lot of your more seminal moments from the show have popped up online, whether it's from somebody who recorded it or whether it's from your own archives. Sure. There's a handful. If you watch the trailer, you can see some of the superstars that have gone on to become huge parts of this hip hop culture. Let's talk about some of the memories of some of the artists that I guess more mainstream people would recognize.
Sure.
And the fact that they, at some way, shape, or form, got a start or came through your show before any of the fame or any of the superstar records.
Right.
So, a couple of the big ones, obviously, is Biggie.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I listened to the story in the Red Bull interview.
Right.
I heard that story.
Yeah, well, I actually don't remember what story was told, but the most compelling story about Biggie coming up when he was roughly 17 or 18 years old is in the film, so I don't want to spoil it.
Oh, all right.
But yeah, he came up unsigned. And he came to the station because he was angry, because I don't know.
You don't want to spoil
beans,
it.
But
he was angry at you guys.
He came up there with a grudge to settle, which inspired him to really go in.
Okay.
And it's funny because that recording of Biggie is one that has eluded even us for almost 25 years.
Right.
And we got it during the making of the film.
That's awesome.
And so when you see us in the film listening to this recording, it's the first time Bob and I have heard it since it happened.
Wow.
And it's pretty wild. I mean, I had goosebumps during the filming, in that scene, and I have goosebumps right now because I told Bob, I was like, yo, if we ever find this recording of Biggie, and listen, the reason why this recording is so elusive is because this is 1991,
right.
So our show just started, so there weren't that many listeners. No, who's got this tape?
Right.
Anyone. I started a blog years ago in which I was posting segments of the show
and trying to get people to send you
try
stuff.
to pull people out of the woodwork, and it didn't even work. So anyway,
Don't give too much.
Yeah. We'll leave it at that. It's
I'm getting goosebumps. I'm excited. Once again, we're talking with Stretch Armstrong.
I'm sorry. No, what I was going to say was, so I told Bob, I was like, yo, when we finally hear this, it's going to be really anticlimactic. Like, he's probably going to be just so or whatever. And I tell you, he kills this.
Oh, really?
He killed it. It's dope.
Oh,
yeah,
see?
Yeah, it's dope.
Okay, so once again, we're talking to Stretch Armstrong, one half of Stretch and Bobbito.
Bobbito, what up?
The documentary is Stretch and Bobbito, Radio that Changed Lives. And if you were a 90s hip-hop head, then that statement is so true. It is radio that changed lives. It's radio that shaped lives. You could even argue that it's radio that shaped radio in some regards, right? Okay, so we tackled Biggie. Let's talk about Nas.
Well, Nas, I would say more than any other artist, epitomizes an artist that was that really affiliated closely with our show through him being a fan when he was 16, a listener, right. And then as an artist who actually wrote Illmatic listening to our show, and then an artist that would come up and debut his new material via our show. And I don't want to say more than that, because I really want people to see the movie, because these stories are told in beautiful Technicolor and stereo, surround sound, in our film Stretch and Bobbito, Radio That Changed Lives, again, which is www.stretchandbobbito.com. You can purchase the film now.
We covered Big, we covered Nas. Let's talk about Jay. Jay's actually, obviously from the trailer we see that he's in the movie.
That's right. Yeah. And so Jay,
we're talking about Jay-Z, of course.
Yeah, Jay. He came up to WKCR, I think, at least 3 times. Actually, maybe more. I think 3 times. Yeah, it's funny. One of the interesting things about making this film is comparing the different perspectives that me and Bob have, because our experiences were so different. And I think you'd be able to appreciate that. While during the show from 1 to 5, I was behind 2 turntables. My focus was on keeping the music going, figuring out how to make these 50 records fit seamlessly together. But also to figure out what instrumentals I can give to the artists that were coming up to inspire them to give a good performance, right. Or sometimes to just give them a beat that they're going to like. So, I don't get sunned like, nah, man, that beat ain't happening.
Right.
That rarely happened. I think because I had good taste and I understood what the artist needed. But my focus was so on the music, whereas Bob was answering the door, answering the phone, answering the mailbox, right. Talking to people on the phone, reading letters, entertaining guests in the green room, and largely having a good time, in between those responsibilities. He also kept a journal during the 90s. So his memory was so much, I would say, better than mine. Through this whole thing, and that's why I think he was better equipped to be the director of this film, because he remembered so much more, and he was able to sort of come up with a narrative based on his memory. And one of the things that he really remembers, and I remember this as well, is that when Jay came up, he didn't even have a record deal. He didn't have a record out,
right? And
he was so cocky.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
wow.
And we spoke about that with him in the interview, and it actually didn't make the film, but it was just ill to hear him talk about how he had this supreme belief in himself. He just knew. I think it probably helped the fact that he was already making money from the street,
right? That
he wasn't, but he just is one of those guys that I think he knew something that everybody else didn't.
That's amazing.
And he gave us a great interview. One of the joys about making this film was not just to get these legendary artists like Eminem and Nas and Jay and Busta and Raekwon and Q-Tip and Monch and Large Professor, the list goes on, to get them to commit to being in the film. But it was the amount of time they gave us, but also the quality of the time they gave us, and how we were able to sort of take them back to a time in their lives that, for the most part, was really special.
Yeah,
before, to quote Nas, before I had to put the rap uniform on and punch the clock. Right. Before I was a professional rapper. Right. When even though I may have wanted to be a star, just being on the radio was like incredible.